You're listening to the Ropes N Riffs podcast with your host, John Kiernan.
Sorry, guys, I had to do that. Maybe I didn't. No, I had to. Welcome to this episode of the Ropes N Riffs podcast. I am John Kiernan, your resident entrance theme song composer. With the thing I did at the beginning of this episode, I think you know who's on the show this week. Today's guest on the Ropes N Riffs podcast is the one and only Mark Crozer. Mark Crozer is the composer behind the song that you heard for Bray Wyatt when he debuted with the Wyatt Family and FCW and on the main roster, Live in Fear, also originally called Broken Out in Love. We're going to talk all about how that song came to be, how Bray chose it from the library, Mark performing at Wrestlemania for the Wyatt family as they walk down to the ring, and all of the different renditions that have come after it. And we're going to talk about what Mark is currently doing in the music industry as well. If this is your first time or your umpteenth time listening to the Ropes N Riffs podcast, first off, thank you for listening and welcome back. Check us out over on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and anywhere you check out your podcast. Anyone that goes over to PayPal and donates $10 or more, which you can find the link down in the description, and you can also search ROPES, the letter N, RIFFS, will get a shout out on the show with any donations of $10 or more. If you head over to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or YouTube, or wherever you listen to your podcast, go ahead and drop us a comment on the show, drop us a review, drop us a 5-star review, and if you leave a comment, I'll go ahead and read that over here on the show. Many of you on the show may know that Bray Wyatt is and will always be one of my favorite wrestlers. May God rest his soul. He was somebody who, when he came into the wrestling industry with the Wyatt family, I always really resonated with. So much so, too, many of you may know this who have seen me perform. I actually have a pair of pants that were crafted very similar to the pants that Bray Wyatt had during the Wyatt family, where they had the birds flying around the leg. So I am very much a Bray Wyatt fan. I will always be a Bray Wyatt fan, and I'm very excited to have the opportunity to speak with the one and only Mark Crozer today. Hope you enjoy. This is an interview I've wanted to do for quite some time, because for those who know me or those who are tuning in for the first time, it is no secret whatsoever that Bray Wyatt was one of my favorite wrestlers and continues to be to this day. May he rest in peace. But I think as a wrestling entrance theme song composer, for me, music is one of the most important things in wrestling. And in the last, I would even say 10, 15, 20 years, there hasn't been a theme for me that's fit a wrestler quite as much as Broken Out in Love and Live in Fear, as it was named afterwards, which was Bray Wyatt's entrance theme, written by you, the one and only Mark Crozer. So thank you for joining me today.
Well, thank you. And sorry it's taken us a while to connect. Got there in the end.
You're a professional. It happens. The fact that you're here, that's the most important thing, and I appreciate you making the time. I've spoken to a lot of people within the industry on entrance theme songs, on music, on wrestling, because that's what this show is about. But as I said at the top here, your music that you've written has now become part of the wrestling ecosystem by way of Bray Wyatt, with lots of different renditions, with lots of different versions created, but nothing, in my opinion, will compare to the first time everybody heard that song when he walked out to it for the first time, whether you heard him at FCW, NXT, WWE, main roster, whatever the case may be. But that song was a piece of music before he came to the main roster. So I'd love to have you unpack a little bit about either the record that came from or just that piece in general and how it came to be part of the Bray Wyatt ecosystem, the Bray Wyatt universe.
So yeah, I wrote that song. As you can tell from my accent, I'm not American. I'm British. People are sometimes surprised because they think the song has quite sort of swampy southern rock kind of feel. I wrote that when I was still living in the UK, probably a few years before it ended up being picked up for the Bray Wyatt's theme, and it was just like one song out of many that I wrote. And at the time, it was really like quite different from all my other stuff, and I wasn't sure what to do with it. So I had just discovered this new music library based in New York that was looking for music, and it was just one of the songs that I submitted to them, and they said, yeah, we'll take that. So it was in that music library for quite a while, just kind of doing nothing. And then from my understanding, Bray Wyatt was looking for a piece of music, and he was very active in picking it himself, and he came across this tune in the library and was, that's the one I want to use. And the rest is history.
And I love the fact too that you're like it's a different style than what I'm kind of known for, what you say you write generally. A lot of the songs, like even as I found out about you through Bray Wyatt's entrance and, through Live in Fear, for me, I was always just like, okay, cool. I wonder what the man behind the music also does. But for me, when I've heard a lot of the pieces, and you may be able to expand this too, one of my favorite composers ever is a composer by the name of Akira Yamaoka. He does a lot of the music for Silent Hill, the video game, all through the career of that. And for me, a lot of the pieces that come from that when he starts going with a band, you have a piece that I really like called Heart is Black. You have a lot of different music. Probably one of my favorites that I actually have pulled up here because I wanted to bring it up was A Night Like This. And it's all very visceral music. So we're obviously going to talk about the Bray Wyatt part of it. But for those who may not be familiar with the catalog of Mark Crozer, I'll always say go check out Mark's other work too. Because if you like Live in Fear, I think that there's a lot of different sounds and colors that you'll find in those. For me, it was always like Mark Crozer and Akira Yamaoka when it gets into that real visceral kind of what I would call like kind of down tempo band music. It just sounds really cool. It's really emotional. So, anyone who hasn't checked out your work, I definitely implore them to because it's absolutely awesome.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, I guess I have a few different modes that I write in. One is the sort of dark, swampy kind of mode, and then there's the more kind of upbeat power pop. But yeah, A Night Like This, that's actually a song by The Cure that I did a cover of. That's my favorite song by them, and somehow it ended up. I wanted to do it kind of differently, and there's a guitar solo in there that I was inspired by. While my guitar gently weeps, that's the kind of vibe I was going for. Quite different. And the other song, Heart is Black, yeah, that's one that was actually my friend and sometime co-writer Bert, who I was in a band with. Who I think he was. We wrote that together, but he was the one who initiated that, and then I think I wrote the lyrics, and I recorded a couple of different versions of that. But yeah, that's sort of one mode that I write in, is the dark. And I have some new stuff out that is going to be that's similar to that in that kind of vein, and then some new stuff coming out soon that is going to be. I've got a new album coming out which is pretty downbeat and dark. So if you like Broken Out in Love, as I still call it, then you probably will like that.
Awesome. And so with Broken Out, and what was the title of it? I keep messing it up because I know it mostly.
Yeah, no. It's fine. I know because nobody knows it as that title. Yeah, it was originally called Broken Out in Love, and I think that was the one thing that they didn't like about it was that I don't think they thought the title really fitted with Bray Wyatt, which I can understand. So they changed it to Live in Fear, which at the time I have to say I was a little bit annoyed about because they did it without, consulting me, which is fine because, they can. I signed a contract and let them have the song and they could do what they like. But I was just like, well, that's kind of weird because there's no point in the song that those words actually appear, whereas Broken Out in Love is
Right.
actually the kind of hook of the song. But, whatever. That's fair enough.
It makes sense that Broken Out in Love is the title too, because even when I was listening to it, like outside of obviously watching him walk down to the ring, that's the last line before it goes back into the, like that intro melody, right? Or the intro melody updated, right? And so for me, I was just like, where does Live in Fear come from? And I was just like, before I knew that it was a library track, I was like, okay, maybe it's just they named it off the vibe of the song, which exactly sounds like they renamed it for the character. But now you're saying that the title makes sense because that is the last sticking line you hear before it goes back into it. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's in the lyrics. And it seemed like it was a good title. I thought it was kind of a bit weird sounding. Broken Out in Love, like love being a disease rather than a good thing, was sort of the.
Talk to us a little bit about what the song in general is about too, because obviously Bray took it and made it part of his universe. But when you wrote that song, what was some of the inspiration behind it, and what kind of crafted those lyrics too?
Well, it's a weird thing because when I write lyrics, a lot of the time I don't really have an idea what I'm doing or what I'm going for. Sometimes words just kind of come out inspired by the sound of or the vibe, and that's what happened with that. It's like the first line, catching flies in his mouth, just kind of popped out as I was singing. I was like, that's kind of weird and cool, and that sort of informed everything else, really. It's not really about any sort of specific thing. I guess it's sort of the idea of obsession with somebody just being something that can kind of really take over your entire life, kind of being trapped in that and not being able to go out because you're so caught up in this feeling that's very intense.
And for those who know Bray, I think that kind of really fits the vibe that he was going for too. And again, for me, two things. First off, when you think of the character Bray and you think of what he was in the cult leader vibe when he was using this piece, it was a matter of, he was really trying to bring everybody into his ecosystem. For me, I've always said wrestling obviously is a fun thing in general, but for me, once they start kind of getting into, okay, this guy can shoot lightning out of his hands or something like that, it gets a little bit weird. And for me, I was always just like, what's the real life scariest thing that you could put into this? And I was like, man, having somebody who's a cult leader and has people following him at just the tip of his word, I was like, that's probably the most horrifying thing that most people can really relate to, because it could be anybody who's a cult leader. And with those lyrics, I feel like it was always like, whether they were very open in nature or whether it was poignant, like you're, kind of the vibe that you're talking about, it always fit with what I think Bray was putting out there. And the other thing also is my wife and I actually run a music school here in New Jersey, and I run composition courses. And when I was taking comp courses in college, it was weird because it was right around the time when technology was becoming a thing, and a lot of educators were grappling with, you have to learn this specific way of music, but also you would have these kids that were so into technology that they knew advanced things before they knew, chords and things like that, right? So you'd have like these kids knowing these advanced modes before they even knew about how to build a C major chord, right? And one of the teachers in the comp class was just like, you have to know everything about theory before you write music. And I remember hearing that and I'm like, I'm pretty sure that's wrong. No
Yeah.
disrespect, but like, I remember being like, I was writing music at that point, like really heavy kind of like metalcore kind of stuff. And then as I went on, more film scory stuff and just now everything in general. But what you said rings true. Sometimes, oh, and the other thing was, you always have to have a reason behind your music. Your music always has to have a reason to exist. And I was like, the reason for it to exist, though, could just be because you're following a vibe up front, right? You're taking these, like you said, catching flies in his mouth. Wow. Okay, great. Now we're there. It doesn't always have to be, I have a story about a guy who went to the store and did this kind of thing. It can simply be that you have that vibe and you just run with it. Yeah.
I mean, some of the best songs are really just about an emotion or about a very tiny moment, or like a feeling, There's so many different kinds of songs. I mean, you've got people like Bob Dylan who write stories, like in a 10-minute song, and that's great. But then you have other people who's just write very basic kind of emotional things that you connect with on an emotional level, where the lyrics don't even necessarily have any particular meaning. I don't like David Bowie, for example. Some of his songs, if you like analyze the lyrics, they're like, if you just read them, they're like, well, this is kind of stupid. But, when he sings it in the context of the song, it's genius, So I don't agree at all. You have to know theory. I mean, I know virtually no music theory whatsoever. And when I first started playing, I didn't know anything. I didn't even know what chords were called. I didn't even realize that G was the last note. I thought after G, it went to H. And like someone's like, no, there's no such thing as H minor. It's back to the beginning again. So, I mean, it's all about just communicating an emotion, I think. And you can do that without really having any music theory. I mean, look at throughout history, pop music, I'd say the majority of those bands that, came out, like the Beatles, they didn't know what they were doing when they first started. I'm sure they went on to learn a lot of that, but, first of all, they're like,
and then they brought in George Harrison too.
Playing a few chords. Oh, yeah. They brought George Harrison, they went to meet him so that he could show them how to play a particular chord. That's how they met him. So it's like, yeah, I totally disagree with that.
Totally. And so when WE goes ahead and licenses the song from you and then changes the name and says, hey, we're doing this, what does that conversation look like? Because I know that even now, WWE and a lot of these companies, they will source sometimes to composers like myself, but a lot of the times I deal one-on-one with the talent. We work out the contract, we work out the song, they bring it, and then if the company wants to use it, there's that conversation. But when you have your music as part of the library and then they say, hey, okay, we're going to go ahead and go full bore with this, have it fully part of Bray Wyatt's entrance and character.
Yeah.
What does that conversation look like from going from a library track to a completely owned track?
Well, I mean, from my understanding, this was like a very, very atypical way that they go about getting a song. I mean, I know that there are particular composers over the years, and I think maybe my understanding was that they were not originally that keen on using somebody who wasn't connected at all, but Bray was pretty adamant that that was a track that he wanted to use. So then it was just a question of coming to me and saying, this is happening, we really want to use this track. They were, I think, initially when he first started appearing on the Florida, whatever it was, the
FCW, yeah, Florida Championship Wrestling, yeah.
That was when I first heard about it. It was still just like a kind of blanket license thing from the original library, and then they wanted to own it outright, pretty much. So I had to get the original library to sign off and give it back to me, so that I could then sign it over to them to use forever. So it was actually fairly straightforward. Just like, this is what's happening. We want to use the song. We could sit down and probably try to come up with something that sounds like that, but we'd rather use your song. And here's the deal. So
now with that also, do you still, because I see obviously it's still part of your catalog from, when you search up your name and it's connected to you and everything. Does WWE completely own it, or do you own like the publishing of it and then they own like the sound recording? Like, how does that work for Live in Fear?
They own the publishing and the song as an entity.
Ah, okay.
And I still own the songwriter's percentage, which is sort of pretty much something that is just a legal thing that you have to actually sign that away to give that up. So yeah, that's good. So I still do see royalties coming from it, which is pretty amazing considering it's been 13 years now that I don't have any other songs that have keep generating money for me. It's great.
And it's great too that you can continue to use it, you can continue to perform with it, and just, again, it's part not just of WWE's legacy, but your legacy. And I think that, musicians always want to have something like that, including their whole catalog. But when you really have that one sticking thing, it's like, man, it's just really cool to see that. And so that song has gone on in so many different ways, even to where you were able to perform it live at WrestleMania for the Wyatt family as they walk down to the ring. How was that experience, being able to be part of WWE backstage and then be able to perform Bray Wyatt down to the ring?
I mean, I have to say that was probably one of the most incredible things I've ever done to be involved in. It was just, I got flown down to New Orleans and put up a nice hotel and treated very nicely. Got to meet everybody backstage, and everyone I met, wrestlers or people behind the scenes, were just really friendly and very welcoming, which was really nice. Got to meet Mr. T, which was the highlight. We were all big fans of his, and he was very friendly. But yeah, no, the actual performance, I mean, it was so brief, went by really, really quickly. It was 2.5 minutes, I think. But it will remain in my memory forever, because it was just so. I've played a lot of shows in my life. I've played some big venues, but nothing like that. Place was just huge. Walking out onto that stage and just not being able to even see anyone's face. It was just like a sea of people holding up their camera phones or whatever, and a roar. I mean, it was really amazing. And then when Bray came out with the other two guys, and yeah, it was
awesome. And when you got there, I'm sure you and Bray had a little bit of time to talk as well. How is that with Bray, being able to connect with him and being like, hey, this was a library track and now it's the thing that is part of your universe? How was that?
Yeah, it was great. I mean, I met him once before. They did a episode of Raw, I think, at the Barclays Center in Brooklyn. So I met him then. He was super excited and friendly, and the same again. He was beaming from ear to ear, from at the beginning, and then afterwards too. He was such a nice guy. It was cool to have that moment. He was very excited, and he was obviously excited for me as well. Realized that it was a big deal for me as much as for him.
And I keep bringing up Bray, obviously, because it was really tied to him, but obviously the whole Wyatt family by extension, right? At that time, again, God rest his soul, Luke Harper, Eric Rowan, you had that whole family who was part of that. Braun Strowman at the time, and they all were able to come down to that theme, which was really cool. And again, I think that for me as a fan, seeing you being able to play it down to the ring, I thought that was probably if I'm being honest, one of the best musical performances in wrestling of somebody performing somebody's entrance live. Because, yeah, and again, no disrespect to other performers who have done it, but there's a lot of different things for those who have or have not performed that we know that go into a live performance. Things like in-ear monitors, things like, okay, cool, do we have everything that the song represents? Do we have all this different stuff, right? And I feel like when and I'm sure everybody else listening and watching this episode here goes back and watches that or watched it in the moment, we were like, man, this is a perform. Like, we weren't even thinking about the performance. We were just thinking about, okay, cool, this totally sets the mood, this sets the scene, and we're good. And I think it's pretty amazing to see that that was probably, yeah, one of the best performances that's happened in live entrance history, in my opinion. And also, you had the plague mask on, all you guys had that set up.
Right.
Something also I wanted to bring up because of what you brought up a second ago, you know, this wasn't originally written for him, but being able to then have this presentation that's kind of created in post, right? For when you guys are performing, it's obvious like he's in the bayou, he's coming down. When you put together a song like this, just in general, are you thinking that this is eventually like the visual representation of what it could be? Or later on, when you're like, okay, cool, this is what it's been turned into, does it give the song new purpose and new life to you?
Well, in terms of the visual, I mean, it wasn't really involved in that, other than, you know, they had a couple of different ideas for the way that we would appear for the performance, and it was actually fairly like late in the day that they decided to go for the kind of boiler suits and plague mask, because one of the original ideas was that we would dress kind of like Bray, wearing the Hawaiian shirts. And I think I remember saying, like, I don't know, this is kind of not sure this is that great. Like, they gave two, I think there were two options, and I didn't really have any say in it, but I did say I think this one's better. And they also wanted me to like wear the mask too, and I said, well, it's going to be really difficult to sing with a mask on my face. So that was when they ended up going for that sugar skull thing, which I thought was really cool. So yeah, I mean, it was kind of interesting to see like how, and I feel like this is probably true of all the times I've done any shows, like there's a lot of planning, but there's also still kind of like a little bit of winging it, even to the last minute, like where that was, I think, probably the day before when we did the run through, when that was actually decided that we were going to wear that. It's not like it had been planned for a long time in advance. I have to be careful what I'm saying, because I did sign a non-disclosure agreement at the time. I'm not sure what exactly that covers, so I probably have to be a little bit careful of what I'm saying about, you know, the way it's all put together, because I don't want to end up taken to court. So I think that's probably okay for me to say that. There's nothing scandalous in that.
Cool. It totally makes sense too. And again, everything kind of happening where you know what you're doing, you know the song, but at the same time, it's like that last minute, like, okay, cool. Here are those little adjustments and changes there. And now, you know, Live in Fear, Broken Out in Love, all of this has been taken now with the legacy, right? And before we got on, I was telling you I had Matt Hardy's wife, Reby Hardy, come on, and we talked about when she had done her rendition of, I'm going to call it Live in Fear because that's where it was at the time, right? Live in Fear, to basically create her own piano rendition of it. And in the interview, she was like, I love the song. The song's beautiful. Right before I went to the studio, I was basically putting it together in the car. I got into the studio, and I'll send it to you after. It's really beautiful. But she created a piano rendition of it, and she was just like, I was just hoping that I did respect to Mark. So I thought it was a really great one. And then after that, Code Orange did their version of Live in Fear, which is now Let Me In, when The Fiend became, you know, the big part of wrestling then too, when he ended up doing the Fiend persona. When Code Orange goes ahead and does their version, did they let you know, hey, this is something that's going on? Or did you find out after it was released? And once you heard that version, what were your thoughts on the Code Orange version being a bit heavier?
I'm trying to remember exactly what happened, because it was quite a while ago now, but I do remember getting a phone call from the guy at the WWE saying, so this is happening. We're probably not, you know, the Bray's character is changing, and we're probably not going to be using your original song anymore. And we've got something in mind for it, but, you know, if you want to have a shot at coming up with something new, then do. So, I mean, I came up with a couple of pieces that, you know, were kind of crap that they didn't go with. But then I think again with that they also, that was kind of a last minute thing too, where I think they'd had Code Orange was doing something, but then they came up with that sort of cover reinterpretation, and again, they liked that, so they decided to go with that one. But yeah, I had no idea that was happening until, I mean, I knew the song was going to be changing, and I was like, oh, that's a shame, because it's been good. And then when they actually went with that version of my song, I was pretty surprised, because I didn't know it was happening, and I thought, this is interesting. It's like, now I got a whole new take on this song. It's like the song that won't die, which is good, I mean, I'm just so surprised, really, that out of the many, many, many songs I've written, if you'd said to me at the time, this is going to become, successful and pretty popular in a particular, with a specific group of people, I'd be like, really? I can't see that, but what? Great. So yeah, the fact that, I mean, I'd love to hear that piano version. There have been all these different versions of this song. And I've seen, because friends of mine, have a particular friend, Bruce, back in the UK, who's sort of more interested in my career with this song than I am. And he's constantly coming up. He'll be like, talking to me like, hey, did you know that your original video of that has now had like 25 million views or something? Like, oh, that's amazing. So, I hear about these different versions or covers from people sometimes. Like, I'm amazed, I mean, I'm amazed at how many different uploads there are on YouTube, and people covering it and doing their own take. And I mean, it's still, exciting for me that people actually know my song. And I remember, like, one time there was a video of some like guys doing a cover of it in a bar in Russia. I'm like,
Really?
there's a band in Russia playing my song. I was like, the craziest thing, I would never ever thought that something like that would happen, So it's been amazing. Yeah.
But it's, for me, as a composer, one of the things that you can tell when you have a really great song is when it can be manipulated in all these different ways and it still keeps the same charm, so to speak, right? I think the rule in composing is like, it's a good song when you're just doing it on a piano or you're just doing it on acoustic with vocals and it's great there. Then when you scale it up with the instruments or change the style or whatever, it's still going to be great because the core of it is always really good. And I think that when you listen to all these different versions, even if it's like the heavy Code Orange version, the original one of yours, the piano one, it's like, man, it always keeps that. It always keeps that main kind of flair. And I've always loved that too. So it's really cool, even for me, to be able to see, when I see my pieces go different places and people do different renditions, to be able to look at other musicians such as yourself, such as accomplished people, and be like, man, it's cool just to see that all these different pieces take on lives of their own. So that's awesome.
Yeah. No, it's a strange thing as well to watch that, because sometimes I don't even. It's not that I forget. Oh yeah, I wrote that. It's that it's just become its own thing. It's just out there it's sort of outside of me now. I mean, I when you were talking about music school, like, I teach at the School of Rock. That's my other sort of part-time job that I do, and
Cool.
I was doing a band thing there with one time. This kid came in, he was like probably 9 or 10 years old. He's wearing a Wyatt Family t-shirt. I'm like, wow, this is really interesting. And then recently I had a lesson with him, and I thought, I'm gonna tell him, because he doesn't know anything about me. And I said, hey,
so he didn't know.
He didn't know. And I said, you might be surprised to know that that the song that those guys came out to, like, I wrote it. And he just, I don't think he believed me. I think he couldn't equate the fact that this guy, silver-haired 50-something-year-old guy from the UK, who's like, just happens to be teaching him in a Rock 101 class, was the person who wrote that song. And I showed him the video from like WrestleMania, and it's like, well, I guess you can't really tell that that's me either, because I'm wearing all this makeup on my face, but that's me. And he's like, I think he just thought, this guy's crazy. He thinks he wrote a wrestling song.
Guess what this guy said today in lessons?
Yeah. So,
but then you pick up the acoustic and you start singing it, and he's just like, oh my God, all right.
Right. I guess so, yeah. Maybe do that next. But yeah, it's quite funny.
Now, a lot of the times when songs like this do end up becoming connected with somebody else, some wrestlers will obviously reach out to the composer and be like, hey, can you do something for me? Since then, have you had other wrestlers say, hey, I'd love you to put something together in that vein for me?
No. I was kind of hoping that they would. I would love to do something for somebody else for sure, but no, that hasn't happened. Maybe that song is just like so, I don't know, it's so sort of idiosyncratic, and it is very different from the majority of the music that I've heard anyway. When I first heard this guy on Facebook, Steve, I think his name is, sent me a message back in 2012 say, hey, have you got a song called Broken Out in Love? Because this wrestler's been using it. I just thought, no. I mean, must just be the same title, because I don't think that, can't see a wrestler would be using that song. It's just nothing like the kind of music that I associate with wrestling. And then it's like, oh, actually it is. So, I think it's perhaps so different that maybe just, I don't know. But yeah, if anyone's watching, listening to the podcast and wants to get in touch about that,
Please,
feel free.
absolutely, yeah. Mark Crozer is available, just so you all know. So I love that. So 2 more questions before I let you go today, and I ask all my guests on the show, if you had to put together a 3-match card, so if you had to put together a wrestling show, but it was only with musicians in the matches, what would they be? Musicians
wrestling each other or competing musically?
Yeah. Musicians wrestling each other. Now, I will say I've had people on the show like Ben Eller, who's a professional guitarist, and we talked all about things like Steve Vai versus Joe Satriani in a battle of the teacher versus the master, so to speak.
Okay.
But then I had someone on the other day who we were talking all about metal guys, and it was totally about the physical aspect of it. So however you take that, my friend, you could do a 3-match card.
Well, I tell you, one of them definitely wouldn't be me, because I would get creamed in about like 10 seconds. Oh my God, that's a question I've never thought about before. Well, I kind of feel like Jack White probably would be able to hold his own in a wrestling ring. Maybe who else in the guitar vein would be good? Maybe Jack White, the guy from the Black Keys, Dan Auerbach. That's his name, isn't it? Yeah.
Yep.
Dan Auerbach, Jack White, and another guitarist. So like in that same vein, like, that would be quite a good one. 3 like sort of bluesy garage rock guitar players.
When you were saying that, I was thinking of the documentary This Might Get Loud.
That's
so you
what I
could
was thinking as
probably
well.
throw in Jimmy Page.
The age. Jimmy Page and Jack
exactly.
White. I mean, I think, Jack White has the age advantage, so he probably would, he'd probably win that. But I feel like Jimmy Page might have some secret strength. Yeah, that would be an interesting thing to watch. That would be funny if that documentary, if they suddenly in the middle just went through the guitars down and went into a rumble. Or whatever.
The lights just go down, the ring comes up, like, what the hell is this?
And then the riff from A Whole Lot of Love starts playing. Yeah.
I brought you all here today.
That'd be cool.
Awesome. So I got one more for you then, and this is the one that everyone says is always the hardest here. What would be 3 songs that you would put on a Spotify playlist that would represent the man of Mark Crozer?
Right. Well, I mean, I feel like probably, Live in Fear's got to be one of them, because that is such a big part of who I am. I would pick a Beatles song. I think probably Here Comes the Sun, because that was very influential. I mean, they were like the most influential band on me, and that's probably my favorite Beatles song, and it encapsulates so much about music in that one short song, and also, the lighter side of my personality. And then probably something by The Cure, like Charlotte Sometimes. That would be a good mix of like dark and light. Yeah.
I like that. And I like, too, that it's all over the board on that, too. And it ties up with the fact that you did the cover, too. So I love that. The cover of the Cure song, I mean.
Right. Yeah.
So I love that. Well, Mark, thank you so much for having some time to come on and chat with us. I know you're a very busy person, and I appreciate the fact that being able to have you on the show, being able to converse about music, Bray, Live in Fear, Broken Out in Love, all of this, just being able to have some time to chat with you today. So thank you.
No problem at all. I'm glad it worked out. And sorry it took a while. It's more to do with me just being incredibly disorganized than anything else. But we got there in the end, and this was fun.